In my 75 years, I've been able to witness so many shifts in terms of the mobility of our people. I know at least 15 people who studied here at Berea College. I grew up with them, and they came from the same modest background as I did. For the longest time, the vast majority of African American students who study at Berea come from Jefferson County, Alabama. Some of the first coal mining that was done by African Americans was done in and around Birmingham, because that was a big coal seam owned by United States Steel. Same company. I think Birmingham for the longest time was called the Steel City. But once you get a kid up here from Inslee, Alabama, in and around Birmingham, and she shows up as a freshman at Berea, and they take on Mountain Day, I think she has to go, oh, I'm from Appalachia too. 90% of the black people who came to work in the coal mining sector of Eastern Kentucky in the early 1900s, they all came from Birmingham. They all came from in and around Birmingham, 90% of them. So there's long been a connection between Birmingham and Berea and the Black Mountain area of Eastern Kentucky. And it was nothing but a migratory stream tied to the coal industry. The labor recruiters who worked for International Harvester and for United States Steel, they went into Alabama because they knew there was a resident labor force that had mining experience. For example, during the Reconstruction era, when the black codes were institutionalized, an African American man in particular could be quickly victimized for loitering, and they put him in jail. And then he would be leased out to a coal company by the county, and the coal company would pay them, and it was called convict labor, okay? And so all of a sudden, when U.S. Steel discovered this seam of coal or bought this 18,000 acres in Harlan County in 1917, they knew where to get the laborers from because they already had a pool of them. 100 years ago, if there was work there in the mines, the blacks found it, or it found them. Now, the migratory stream began when I was born in the mid-40s, the migratory stream out of Appalachia, which became a consequence of the mechanization of mining. My father went into the mine when he was 13 in 1930. His daddy had been in the mine, and his daddy had been in the mine. And so by the 1940s, when I was born, coal had generated so much money that their research and development created the conditions for them to invent labor-saving devices, mining machines. For example, I can remember so well when my daddy came home after he had gotten a job running something called a continuous miner, which was $1 million machine that went through a seam of coal like a hot knife through butter. And Daddy said, well, this helps us, but it puts 250 boys out of work. A significant number of African Americans from our hometown in Harlan County moved to Cleveland, steel town, another manufacturing industrial hotbed in the 50s. So the people started moving out of Appalachia, they moved out of Hazard, they moved out of Harlan, they moved out of Jenkins, they moved out of Eastern Kentucky in droves, and they ended up in Huff, in Cleveland. And they got good jobs at General Motors, you know, and they got good jobs at all of the Delco plants and anything associated with the automotive industry, until the automotive industry began to say, we can make these cars cheaper in Okinawa. When they moved all those things to the Pacific Rim, and those, quote, foreign cars from Japan and Korea began to replace those Oldsmobiles and those Chevrolets, so that now the kids can't even migrate to Detroit because Detroit itself, its footprint has shrunk. And Detroit's not much different than Harlan now, you know, in terms of what happens when these companies leave, or what happens when mechanization and technology and robotics can create and make cars with much more efficiency than human beings do. Even though the United Mine Workers of America was one of the first racially integrated unions, and my father was an ardent trade unionist, when the rubber hit the road, the white people were more likely to keep their jobs. Black people were the last hired, they did the dirtiest work, and they're the first ones gone. So that their displacement by these machines was something they could not push against the force of history, literally. In 1969, Galen Martin, who's the head of the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. He's a graduate of Berea College. Galen hired me when I graduated college, my first job, and he let me work for them from May until I left and went to graduate school. Galen had grown up in Raynell, West Virginia, so he knew coal mining. So Galen went to Harlan County with me and sat down across from my daddy, and he convinced my father to file a lawsuit against United States Steel for employment discrimination. They had no black supervisors. They had no blacks running these big machines. Everybody said, Earl, if you sue them, they're gonna fire you, buddy. And so Dad and 8 other African-American men filed a class action suit. And within 2 years, Dad and those 8 other African-American men won that lawsuit. And so there we were, some of the blacks got these better jobs. You know, all of a sudden Dad went from making $14,500 a year to making $58,000 a year. He thought he died and gone to heaven. By the time my brother, my oldest brother, God rest his soul, left mining in the late 90s, he was making $90,000, $100,000 a year. Lots of coal miners were, but they didn't need as many people. They had these machines. So now, even though the production of coal in Kentucky is higher than it's ever been, they have the fewest number of people than they've ever had, because all you have to do is have some dynamite and a machine that's called a drag line, and rather than go under the mountain and find the seams of coal and mine them out, they blow the mountain off. Mountaintop removal is the latest phase in the evolution of mining that is not only the most destructive environmental catastrophe, it also represents the very demise of coal mining women and men. Right now, nobody in my hometown that was the very ground zero for coal mining, Harlan County, nobody in our town works in a coal mine anymore. There are no coal miners in Lynch, Kentucky right now. And that would be like saying, you know, there are no hot dog stands in New York City. This whole Appalachian thing for me has just been a wonderful intersection of 75 years where I've been able and blessed to have my personal life intersect with my professional life. And I'm a real one-trick pony. I don't know anything but what little I know about blacks in Appalachia.